Hey everybody, Ben here from DMC Films and Cinderblock Studios, and it's time for another color theory video. Today we're looking at mixing chromatic black. What is it? How do you mix it? And why should you care? That and more coming up. So what is chromatic black anyway? Well, put simply, rather than black out of a tube or a jar, chromatic black is not even really black so much as it's just a mix of colors that represents something that is very dark that you can use in place of black. In general, chromatic black is often just referred to as a dark. Like rather than saying grab your black, someone will say, oh, just grab your dark. What makes chromatic black so interesting is while it's in its dark state, you really can't tell or even really kind of distinguish it in regular black paint. So how exactly would you go about mixing a chromatic black? My favorite way of doing this is by starting with a secondary color, something like orange, green, or purple, and then mixing in its complement. Or, of course, vice versa. You'll want to focus on your cool colors in order to tone down the value. Cool colors on most artists' palette are going to be a darker value. Now, for more on value and color value, check out my original color theory video over here, where I kind of discussed that difference between a warm and light color and a cool and dark color. So for today's mix, we're going to be using Pearl Red, which is very similar to Cadmium Red, although it is a little bit more opaque. Some Phthalo Blue, and we're going to make an interesting purple out of that. We're going to add yellow to brown it, and then we're going to add more blue to make it that sort of chromatic black. So what do you say we give this a try? So as I just mentioned, our three colors today are Cad Yellow Medium, Phthalo Blue, and some Pearl Red. I think the three together just are really good, strong primary colors, which should give us a really nice mix for this. So again, you're mixing some sort of a secondary color to start. So I'm going to go ahead and do sort of a purple, just with our red and blue. I always seem to forget how potent of color Phthalo Blue is. It's got such a strong tint strength that it often overpowers the red. That looks pretty good. Might be a little bluer than it needs to be, but not a big deal. Now, mixing a chromatic black, you're going to be getting a lot of variance. If you don't do it a lot, and I don't do it a lot, I'm often using just black out of my jar. So if you're not used to doing this, the first couple of mixes you do probably going to be a little harder. So once you are satisfied with the purple, now this is a nice deep purple. In some scenarios, this could actually be used as is for chromatic black, and it really kind of depends on what other colors you're using on your painting. But for this, we're just going to go ahead then and grab our yellow. And as you can see, it's a little bit green. That's because that was a little more blue. I had a little more blue in that mix than I thought I did. So again, just add more red. Whatever the color ends up being, mix in your complements. Just keep referring back to your color wheel to get that nice solid color. Now this is pretty close. It's a little red. So red, we want to get a little extra green, I'd say, in there. That's pretty close. I'd say that's a really strong chromatic black. Now, again, chromatic black isn't black. It's more of it's going to be a brownish color. It's always going to lean a little bit closer to one color versus the other. And it's still much redder than I'd like. Once you do this a few times, you're going to start to be able to train your eye to see what color it sort of is and what color it sort of isn't. So we're going to add a little more blue back into this and get that nice and dark. And again, mixing these chromatic blacks, it's a great way to learn color mixing and color theory, because you're definitely going to see those differences in the color, especially if you're mixing on a palette with a white backdrop. I did this specifically today. My palettes are clear, they're glass. And a lot of times, if you don't know what you're doing as much, you're not going to be able to see that quite as well just on any kind of a surface. So if the backing of your palette is white, you're going to be able to see that color as if it was on your canvas, your paper, or anything like that. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but I'm using watercolor paper again today. It's my regular test sheet. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. It leans a little bit on the blue side, but again, chromatic black, it's gonna lean, to some degree on some side or another. So you have a nice, strong. I'm gonna have to get a different knife here. Excuse me. That's a good knife for mixing, that other one, but it doesn't save me from getting paint all over my hands. So you have a nice, strong, dark color with a really nice sort of blue undertone to that. Now, a good way to double check to see if you're on the right track for mixing a lot of these blues and dark chromatic blacks is just to add a tiny bit of white to whatever you happen to be mixing. This will kind of give you an understanding of just where that color sits. So I just made that mix. If I wasn't sure, if I wasn't as experienced as I am with this, I'm like, is that close? I don't know. I can't really tell. Just take a little bit of that color on the side, grab a little bit of white, and just kind of mix that in. And if it sort of grays out, then you're pretty good with what you are. Again, this is a little bit bluer. I'm actually going to go ahead and grab a little more red for my palette. And bring that in. And I'm going to push this to being a little bit browner now. Because that blues might be good for particularly a warmer painting. Because warmer light reflects cooler shadows. You can find more about that in the video up in the corner here. I'll throw a card in there. I did that not too long ago about how the color of your light is going to reflect a different color shadow. So this is a lot redder of a color. It's still, again, very dark. You may not be able to tell very distinctly it from black, especially given their surrounding color. So this would be a good one for a painting with more cool colors, so more greens and blues. I would definitely use something like this in that one. It's still, again, very dark, very similar to that, and I still have a lot of the blue in there to kind of keep that color down. And if you're going to mix that, again, with the white to kind of determine that, clean my knife off here. So you have that, mix in your white. Still pretty blue, but it is much closer than we had before. And again, you can do this in either direction with any sort of variant of the colors, but I find that focusing on your blues tends to make a more impactful chromatic black. So that's what chromatic black looks like and how you mix it, but why should this matter? Why should you really ever use this in your paintings? Compared to a straight out of the tube black, chromatic black is going to make your paintings feel a little bit more complex. Tube black can be a great color for mixing, but for just straight out of the tube color, it's a bit limiting to what it can do, and it shouldn't really be used in every application. If you're looking for a good challenge to kind of push your color theory and color mixing forward, if you happen to have a tube of black, put it on the shelf and don't touch it for a full year. Just mix your own chromatic blacks, and I can guarantee you your color mixing will be 10 times better. Again, I'm not saying you should completely disregard black paint in general. It definitely has its uses, but don't let it be a crutch. Don't completely depend on it as one of the colors in your set. So if you paint traditionally and use some sort of black on your palette, let us know what it is in the comments below and kind of join in the discussion about why chromatic black is so much better or so much worse for you as an artist. Granted, a lot of this has to do with acrylic and oil painting. A lot of different mediums like watercolor and gouache. A black paint might be a little bit more useful. Keep all this in mind for your next project. Subscribe for more, and this has been from DMC Films and Cinderblock Studios. See you guys next time.